Good evening. Thank you again for your patience and staying with us this evening. At this time, we are exiting executive session, and we're going to continue and proceed with the regular session. We're going to start off with our opening exercises of a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Would any governing board member like to lead the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Ms. Stone. Again, I appreciate your patience. I can't say that enough. We are going to proceed with number 5, staff and board recognitions. Due to the sake of time, governing board members, do we have any objection to passing this at this time? Okay. We're going to proceed. I appreciate that. And skip to number 6, public comment. The first one, Ms. Cassidy Gastros.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President, Monica Ceja Martinez, Mr. Savoy, members of the Governing Board, and members of the community. I would like to say thank you to Peoria Unified School District and Governing Board members, especially Ms. Monica Ceja Martinez and Ms. Danielle Avery, for your support during the City of Peoria's event, Lunch with the Council Member, on January 16th, 2018, at Raymond S. Kellis High School. I would also like to thank Cotton Bowl Elementary School, who had representatives in attendance, and a great big thank you to my principal, Mr. Wooten. Many students who attended Raymond S. Kellis High School lives in Peoria, Glendale, Phoenix, and many other cities. This event allowed city officials, principals, students, and others to come together and make a difference through collaborated efforts. This event displayed strong support for our school and our students. A great big thank you to the City of Peoria and to all who attended. I would also like to take a minute to shine light on the Peoria Unified programs in the PUSD. A selective number of students from Raymond S. Kellis High School in the Unified Sports programs, along with their partners, myself included, were chosen to represent the state of Arizona 2018 USA Special Olympic Games in Seattle, Washington for soccer. If you would like to make a donation, please stop by Raymond S. Kellis High School in the front office to see how you can support us, or contact Mr. Wakeford at Raymond S. Kellis High School. We have to raise $13,000. Any support is greatly appreciated for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, may I please have Kyle Ng.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for having the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Kyle Ng, and I've been a resident of Peoria since 1995. My wife and I have 3 children who have all received excellent educations here in PUSD, including at Oakwood, and my oldest daughter's a member of the National Honor Society and a junior at Centennial High School. I come from a long line of educators. My wife taught in the district for 5 years. My mom taught for 41 years in Southern California. Her brother, my uncle, spent time right here, had a long, distinguished career in education. His name is John Fung, actually worked here right here in the school district. And the list goes on and on. Yeah, we are a family of educators. We're also a family of inclusiveness and gender equity. We are proud that in 2017, my first cousin, Kimberly Yee, was the first was the second woman to serve as the majority leader in the Arizona State Senate. But the reason why I'm here today is because I'm concerned of a tweet sent out by the leader of our school board that I believe shows poor judgment, shows discrimination, shows bias, and makes us wonder if she'll be able to serve our schools in an unbiased, gender-neutral manner. Let's read the tweet on her public Twitter account in which she tagged the school district and said, in 127 years, Peoria Unified has never had a woman superintendent. It's time for the right woman. This is not inclusiveness. This is not what we teach our kids. When it comes to leading our district, our school board president has made it clear, hire women over men regardless of qualifications. And while I know this tweet has been deleted, the damage has already been done. Plain and simple, men not need to apply for jobs at PUSD. So I know it's not protocol to respond, but I believe any board member that doesn't censure this board president and denounce this tweet for her exclusionary message is guilty of gender bias themselves. After the last meeting I attended on December 7th, someone on the board said, Dr. Schiffler didn't show leadership because of his actions. I agree, but does that only apply to the staff and not the board? Can the board honestly be fair in selecting the next superintendent when the board president has already shown gender bias against many qualified candidates with her public statement? Will this school board and this district be subject to future legal actions for discriminatory hiring practices? Should this board president step aside during this process or step down from her post entirely? The students are watching, the community is watching. Members of the board, it's time for the right, most qualified person. My time's up. I truly appreciate the time. Thank you.
Since it was addressed to me, I'd be more than happy to address you. I recognize, Mr. Ng, the time that you took to follow and come forward in addressing me. I'd be more than happy to continue the conversation, and we can discuss how that came about and what the statement is. The fact is, we have not had a woman in this superintendent seat, so I appreciate you acknowledging that as well. And when a constituent did bring that to my attention, I agree totally that we should practice inclusivity. With that being said, I was practicing my First Amendment right. I was not using district resources, and I'd be more than happy to continue that conversation with you. Thank you for your time. At this time, I don't have any more public requests. We're moving on to number 7, consent agenda. Would anybody like to bring forward something from the agenda? Okay. I need a motion and a second.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion passes 5-0. Moving on. Agenda item number 9, discussion and consideration and possible approval of a settlement agreement regarding case number CV 2017-010809, Sheila Keelan versus Peoria Unified School District. Do I have a motion?
I would like to move that we instruct our attorneys to move forward and we approve the settlement agreement as stated in the motion, in the item.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? There's been a motion and a second to approve the discussion, to approve the consent agenda, the approval and settlement agreement regarding case number CV 2017-010809, Sheila Keelan versus Peoria Unified School District. Please cast your vote. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to 9.2, discussion and consideration of selection of the interim superintendent. Do I have a motion?
President Sayah Martinez, I move that we select Mr. Savoy as our interim superintendent while we go through the process of finding our future leader who will lead the district, for the long term, solely based on process. He's been sitting in the seat for a couple months.
Just a moment.
Sure.
We haven't have discussion yet, so you have a motion on the table?
Okay.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for interim superintendent for Mr. Steve Savoy. Mr. Sandoval, since you started the conversation.
Thank you. So, as going along to as to why I feel that this is the right choice on behalf of the district. From a seamless perspective, he's been sitting in the seat for the last couple of months. Certainly has done a good job of maintaining the calmness throughout the district. So, and when you take a look at, kind of the, current approved hierarchy within our district, he, is, kind of that, second in command, if you will, naturally segue into that role, again, as we look to search and find that leader for our district from a long-term perspective. Thank you.
Any other comments? Oh, excuse me, Mrs. Connect? Mrs. Pangarelli, any comments, discussion?
No.
Mrs. Doan?
No.
I do like to take a moment, and I appreciate you acknowledging Mr. Savoy. And Mr. Savoy, I do want to tell you that the time that I've spent with you in the past couple of months has been enlightening, and I have appreciated all your efforts and honesty through this process. Looking at the situation and going forward, I have been in the classrooms, and I have a different way I would like to move forward with this district. Okay, so with the motion, any more discussion?
Well, I just would like to acknowledge Mr. Savoy's being board president in 2017 with the changes that had occurred and Mr. Savoy stepping in. I really appreciate all your hard work and getting to know you better on a one-on-one basis. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay. We have a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Steve Savoy for the interim superintendent. Please cast your vote. We'll do a roll call for this one. Mrs. Connect?
Aye.
Mrs. Pangarelli?
Nay.
For myself, it's a nay. Mr. Sandoval?
Yay.
Mrs. Doan?
Nay.
Motion fails. 2-3. Do I have a new motion on the table?
I would like to make a motion to appoint Mrs. Linda Palace Thompson as superintendent, interim superintendent.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Doan?
Yes. I would like to say we met with 3 wonderful applicants tonight, any one of which I believe would do a really good job. But I believe that Mrs. Palace Thompson had some points that stood out to me that were exciting. And I do thank Mr. Savoy, and I believe that he has done a fabulous job. I don't downgrade him in any way. I believe that this district needs some healing. I do. And that was a word used by Ms. Pallas Thompson that really impressed me. And I would like to see a move in that direction by all concerned. This district does have some problems, and I would like to see those addressed and met, and that is why I would like to see Ms. Pallas Thompson take the role of interim superintendent.
Mr. Sandoval?
Thank you. Ms. Pallas Thompson, you are the first leader here in the DAC that I met, and and I greatly respect you, hold you in high regard. So I just want you to understand that my position is one of process, which I think after sitting on the board for this initial year, I think there are some opportunities that we have as a district to look at some of our processes to make us even more of a world-class district as we continue to realize high marks across the board on behalf of our students. So we take a look at a process in this case, someone to move into the seat from a seamless perspective. There's a reason why Mr. Savoy was considered that second in command, and even given the designee role for that matter. An individual really to get us through this transition, continue on the path of what we've really to uphold the promise that we have made to our community and our students, which is certainly to provide high caliber teachers and a rigorous curriculum, holding us accountable for that, again as we go out and search for that permanent leader. So I do greatly thank you for the time. I greatly thank you for what you do every single day on behalf of our students. Thank you.
Mrs. Connect?
So I don't know if the people in this room or in the community understand how difficult these decisions are. I know that members of this board certainly take into consideration the gravity of these decisions. They impact individual lives, and they impact our school sites, and they impact our entire school district and broader community. So this is a big deal. And for me, my fondness for any of the candidates, it couldn't be a factor. I'm really looking for the well-being of the entire district moving forward, and so I'm grateful for this opportunity to share the criteria that I was looking for. My non-negotiables are certification and experience. And the third candidate that we spoke to today had not only a doctorate in education administration, but has helped two other Arizona school districts in the role of interim superintendent, one of which was a very unstable district at the time. My goal through this process has been stability, someone who could assist us as a board through what I'm sure will be an emotional process, someone who is knowledgeable, and as I said, has experience with both school boards and staff. I was looking for an individual who would minimize any potential disruption or drama, but I stood alone on that one, and so it is what it is.
Mrs. Pingarelli?
Well, I would agree with you, Mrs. Connect, that we take the decisions not lightly. I generally never even eat before I come to these meetings. I get nervous. This has been a difficult decision in that we have one person who has done an exceptional job for the last month and a half. But I think at this point, for me, I would like to see a change. And so that's why I am supporting Mrs. Linda Pellis-Thompson.
All right, and looking at all the criteria, I recognize that one of the candidates does have superintendent experience and interim superintendent experience for a couple governing board school districts. My biggest concern, though, this person stepped into a district and created a policy that restricted public comment. And since we are continually trying to encourage community to come forward, that was a big detractor of limiting the public voice, and that is not the direction that we want to head in Peoria Unified School District. Going forward, looking at the internal candidates, I would agree, Mr. Savoy, my experience with you has been nothing but pleasant. With that being said, I have offered my support to Linda Pellis-Thompson. She has the experience. She has the superintendent certificate. She showed Peoria Unified her testament and unwavering passion and commitment to this community, students, and staff. She assisted in passing a bond, which we may be going forward in 2018. She has worked with multiple superintendents with strategic planning, which this governing board has said over and over, we need a strategic plan, and she will help carve that path for us as we go forward and look into the next superintendent. She has also received references from previous Peoria Unified Governing Board members who have different points of view. So when I take all those things in consideration, ultimately, she has students first, and she has unwavering support from the administrators, which have signed a declaration that over 90% of our site administrators support her in this position. So with that being said, I value the people we serve, and they trust her, and they know her best, and so I would like to offer my support to Linda Pellis-Thompson.
Mrs. Ceja Martinez?
Mrs. Connect.
I think it would be perhaps unfair or unkind to leave our public with the idea that Dr. Rice was not an individual who allowed his community to speak, because it's my understanding that that decision was made in a very stressful time in his school district, this district he was serving at the time, when he was looking for a way to calm the community, and that after a very brief time, he reversed that decision. So I don't want to leave that hanging in the air, that he did something that was contrary to the culture of that community.
I appreciate, Mrs. Connect, you acknowledging that. Just like in social media, when something is out, it also shows the other side. My concern was looking at our circumstances, he would be facing the same thing, and to put and limit community voice is not the direction that we're heading. So that's where I was standing, and you are correct, though. After he learned from experience, he overturned it and made a recommendation to the board.
Okay, so I don't think that the fear of that is a reason to disqualify him. I see the direction of the board, and in the interest of offering our full support to our interim superintendent, I'm prepared to support Linda Pellis-Thompson.
Is there any more discussion? Okay, we will proceed with the roll call vote. Mrs. Connect?
Aye.
Mrs. Pengarelli?
Aye.
Myself as an aye. Mr. Sandoval? Mrs. Doan?
Aye.
The motion passes 4-1. Ms. Linda Pellis-Thompson, you are our interim superintendent. Would you like to address the board?
Ms. Martinez, members of the governing board, sitting here and listening to you, it's kind of a surreal experience. I'm looking at my colleague. As you are well aware, I stand in full support of Mr. Savoy and the work that he's done. I'm hoping, based on what we talked about, which was an executive session, that we can move forward, that we can pull us together, and that our job is to bring in the top-notch, oh my gosh, the very best superintendent for our district, for our children. I so appreciate your support, appreciate the support of my colleagues, of certainly our principals, our teachers, and I promise you, I will do everything I can to continue to make Peoria number one, as we've always done. So thank you, Steve, and hey, let's make this happen. Thank you, appreciate you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. Moving on, 9.3, discussion selection of date for February study session. Due to the time, would we like to have this discussion now or follow up via email?
Email is fine with me.
Okay. All right, going forward, I appreciate that. 9.4, update and discussion on the Met Professional Academy. We have Mr. John Croto. Thank you for hanging in there.
No problem. Good evening, President Sehar Martinez, members of the board. I come to you tonight for a brief update on the Met Professional Academy. As you know, we, well, maybe not.
Mr. Croto, the arrow is on the bottom right of the keyboard. Not working? There you go.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that, technical difficulties again. The history. So the governing board, as you know, approved the acquisition of the Challenger Space Center on August 10, 2017. Shortly after that, on August 24th, there was a discussion on which program or what we would do with the building. At that time, it was addressed that we would move the Met Academy, currently at Old Main on the Peoria campus, to that new facility. Shortly after, in September, you selected Mrs. Barbara Coakley, who is joining me tonight. She's in the back. She is the new Met director and doing a great job, hit the ground running, and she's doing a great job trying to get the transition and working with all that. On October 30th, we acquired the Challenger Space Center. That's when it closed. For the real estate, we took possession of that. I do want to point out, so it's on the record, everybody knows that that acquisition was at no cost for our district. Shortly after that, we assessed the needs, or during that time before we took it, we assessed the needs of the building. We did a very comprehensive need of structural needs and what that building would take in order to bring it to school quality as we move forward. We continue to do that process. And so on January 3rd, during your study session, we had a chance to walk that facility and you saw it for yourself. So it was pretty exciting. So that's the history of where we've been with the building. Our future actions that we need to complete. We're going to begin a naming process. Right now it is the Challenger Space Center. We're going to highlight that, and there's an agenda item tonight later on. I'm going to highlight what we're actually going to do and the steps we're going to take following our governing board policy FF. We are in the process of drawing up some plans. We have to submit plans to the city to change this facility from a museum type code to a school code. So there has to be some plans involved. We're doing that. We're in the process of doing that. We are, like I said earlier, in process of creating a schedule to upgrade that facility to bring it to our district standards. We're finalizing the program, the building needs, what they have now currently at Old Main and what they will need at the site. And the plan, we're planning to transition to that new facility with an opening date of July 1st, 2018. So that's pretty aggressive in our plans, but we're on track and everybody is working extremely hard to make that happen. Little update on funding. During this transaction, we received approximately $200,000 in addition to the building in the transaction. We have done some estimations so far, and these are some possible funding ways that we can use in order to fund some of the projects. As you saw when you walked through there have been some unforeseen things that we did not know about and did not discover, and we have to correct those in order to move. One of those biggest things being changing the fire alarm in there to fit a school code as opposed to a museum code. That is one of the things. The wiring for technology, as you know, Met is uses a lot of technology in their program, and that needs to be brought up to speed so that kids can have access to technology. With that, we have adjacent ways. That's going to be used approximately $25,000 to repair some of the parking lot. As you saw when you walked, the parking lot is not in great shape. It's failed in construction standards, and we're going to bring that back up to standards for that. The developer assistance agreement, we're going to use figuring approximately $200,000, bond funds $125,000, and some district additional assistance at approximately $100,000. So that's where we sit with what we're looking to do. We're trying to do the best we can and move in there and make it a great space for the Met program. So at this time, I'll stand for questions, and if I don't know the answer, I have Ken over there waiting, so I'm sure there's going to be questions on funding.
Mrs. Ceja Martinez?
Mrs.
I'm going to
Connect.
throw out a wild and crazy idea, and I threw it out that day. I think we should look at HGTV and do a Flip This Museum show.
I like it.
Because finding out outside sources to participate in this evolution of this project, I think is a very attractive proposition. So I did some research online, but I didn't find the right person. But I know we have a grant writer or maybe somebody else. Just make a phone call. What a great show that would be.
I agree.
So
I think
let's
it's a great idea. That'd
have
be
somebody
fun,
ask the
actually.
question.
So.
I hit a dead end, but maybe somebody could.
We'll definitely figure out how to do that.
That's my out-of-the-box idea for
I
tonight.
love it.
Okay.
I love it.
Mrs. Pingerelli?
Oh, well, thank you for the presentation. I know you guys have encountered some additional cost. I know when we first talked about it, it was supposed to be kind of an even swap in terms of the $200,000 that they were giving us to what we needed to renovate. Now it's about $250,000 over that. Are we pretty stable on those figures now?
We are, and we're going through it. We're pretty stable. We've been meeting a lot. I know Ken and his crew have gone out to contractors and begin to get estimates and things like that. That is probably a pretty stable figure
Okay.
at this point. So we're trying to keep the cost down as
I know.
much as we can without hurting the Met program or hurting the students that are going to go over there. So
I think it's going to be top-notch when it gets all said and done, it's up and running. So I appreciate all your hard work, and I do like your idea, Kathy. Thank you.
Mr. Sandoval?
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Pingerelli, for that question. That was similar, same one that I had. But in addition to that, when we toured the facility a month ago, something like that, what I really enjoyed is Ms. Coakley, is that correct? Coakley, thank you. Your vision, for the center, your understanding of our existing demand with regard to the different programs that realize, a higher number of students versus the others, to how you're going to structure the facility, in addition to, integrating, those common spaces, allowing for, some level of, collaboration, amongst the students, which certainly is important as they continue along into the 21st century workforce. So thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation, Mr. Croto.
Ms. Stone?
Thank you for your work. It was a good presentation. Thank you.
And superintendent. Thank you again. I appreciate the tour and your vision, so I echo my colleagues' statements. I just wanted to highlight that we'll be able to serve more students. So though we're investing more than we anticipated, we look forward to hearing that progress over a period of time, but ultimately we'll be serving more students, and it will be another magnet program that we can add going forward. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
You might as well come back.
Discussion on the remaining Challenger Space Center to the Met Professional Academy.
President Sejar Martinez, members of the board, I'm back to talk about the proposal I mentioned in the previous presentation. So we are looking at renaming the Challenger Space Center. With that, there's Governing Board Policy FF, and you see that on your screen here. It gives us the direction in how we have to go about to name a facility in our district. I'm not going to read that to you in time and all that, and I know you're very familiar with it, as we did the Ironwood renaming a couple months ago when I presented that to you. So there is a district policy FF, which refers to a school building or administration building, gymnasium, or anything we're going to rename. We will be following that process. Part of that, once identified, important part of the changing school or facility names is that once we solicit all the name ideas and bring that to you, we have to have a minimum of one public hearing prior to the formal consideration by the governing board. So we will plan that in the future as well and bring you that input. That is also part of that policy FF on renaming facilities. What's our plan of action for the solicitation of names? We are going to seek input from the following groups. Obviously, your input is important to us, so we're going to ask the governing board for any ideas they have in renaming that. The Met students, we're going to go to the students. Mrs. Coakley will speak with the students and solicit ideas from the students on naming their facility. The faculty and staff at the Met facility, as well as the Met Advisory Board. As you know, we have a lot of business partners with the Met, and they're on the advisory board, and we would like to have a conversation with them in the upcoming meetings to see what their ideas are on renaming this facility. At that time, once we collect all these, we will bring all the suggestions to you. We will have that study session as our policy says we have to, and hopefully have a name for you to bring forward and rename that facility. So that is our plan. We're going to do this sometime in the spring. We're not going to carry it over into the next school year, but hopefully we can get this done the next couple months and bring that to you and follow that process in the spring coming up. So I'll stand for any questions or directions you may have on renaming that facility.
Mrs. Pangarelli?
I'm going to start thinking, so hopefully I can put a few names out there, but thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Connect?
Well, I'm just noticing that the agenda says discussion on the renaming of the Challenger Space Center to the Met Professional Academy. So I thought, looking at the agenda, that that's what that was going to be, the new name. I guess I'm wrong. There's a lot more to it than that.
There's a lot more to it, and in reading the policy, we want to follow policy, obviously. It's important to do that, and that may be their name. That's how we refer to it now, because that's how it's referred to at Old Main, but that doesn't necessarily mean that was what's going to come forward. So.
Okay.
Mr. Sandoval?
Thank you. So one thing I would kind of have in our head as we look to rename this facility, and when I was reading 9.5, I thought the same as misconnected as well. So that's why my statement is what it is. But I would just make sure that we're thinking obviously of the future of the district, and the name having a long shelf life. I do like the MET Professional Academy, but having something a little broader may allow us to integrate other programs as we continue to grow and adapt to certainly the needs of our student population. Thank you.
Thank you. We will definitely take that into consideration.
Ms. Stone?
I don't have anything, thanks.
And all I wanted to add is I appreciate the transparency. That way the community can see and start thinking, and especially our students being involved in the process. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, moving on to 9.6, report and discussion on local, state, and federal legislative issues and activities.
Madam President, thank you for this opportunity. Tonight, we are not reporting on any federal or state updates, but very quickly on a local update, I would just like to extend my well wishes to Mrs. Thompson. I certainly want to extend my gratitude to this governing board for allowing me the opportunity to serve the entire community of Peoria Unified School District. It has been an honor. I was humbled by that experience, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very, very much. I also would like to extend a huge thank you to the scores of folks who sent me emails, phone calls, dropped in with notes of encouragement, support from many teachers, former students, colleagues from around the state, as well as in the district. And I really appreciated the encouragement that they provided me and the loyalty that I heard in those words. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 9.7, request for future agenda items at governing board meetings. Mrs. Connect? Mrs. Pingrelli?
No.
Mr. Sandoval?
None at this time.
Mrs. Stone?
No.
And none on my end as well. Moving on to number 10, informational reports. 10.1, presentation and discussion on the budget process. Ms. Myers and Mr. Hicks, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, President Ceja Martinez, members of the Governing Board, Mr. Savoy. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the work the Budget Committee has conducted over the last month. Since the last board meeting, the committee has met 2 times on January 9th and January 23rd. During the meetings, Mr. Hicks and I have continued to provide a background to the committee on school finance, how schools are funded, as well as to talk about the fiscal 17 AFR, which is a postmortem of prior year expenditures to budget across district funds. The AFR is the annual financial report. We also have talked about the prior year budget process and reviewed with the committee the initial fiscal 19 preliminary budget summary. For fiscal 19, the Budget Committee has been made aware of some changes, including expected inflation revenue increasing by 1.5%, the pending increase for Prop 206 in January, with the minimum wage increasing to 11%, as well as a scheduled increase of 0.30% for ASRS employer contributions. Mr. Hicks has also shared with the group the governor's proposed 2019 budget that has a public education focus. This includes the restoration of prior district additional assistance cuts. The Budget Committee is now looking at priorities for next year based on revenue projections, as well as fixed and variable expenses that might be associated with varying priorities. The next Budget Committee meeting is scheduled for February 6, 2018. And this concludes the Budget Committee update. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay, moving on. Awesome. Thank you so much. 10.2, District Budget Report for the month of November 2017.
We just look at those and go
Yep.
past them.
As you can see, they are online, goes over M&O and all the funds. Thank you. Moving on. 10.3, Budget, Facilities, Planning, and Construction Report. It's also online. Moving on. 10.4, Report on Upcoming Meetings and Events. We do have a holiday coming up, President's Day. The Peoria Education Foundation, 13th Annual Education Visionary Awards at the Broadway Theater. I believe you can still get tickets. And it also helps support our students, all the fundraisers that they bring to our district. So thank you. And 10.5, Draft Agenda for February 8, 2018 Board Meeting. which will be available online. And number 11, adjournment. Do I have a motion?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Some people don't want to go home. Steve?
Motion passes.
Oh. Okay. How many, thank you.